because it's coming up to Christmas, John, I thought it wouldn't be Christmas without a pop quiz. So this conversation, I'm going to give you some very well-known lyrics, and I want you to see if you can tell me the missing word, if that's all right with you.
Up to your tricks as usual.
Your starter for 10, John. I want to know what the missing word is and who said it. Our Father who art in
Heaven.
Who said it?
Jesus.
Correct. And another one. Then I saw a new what and a new earth.
A new heaven and a new earth.
And who said that?
St. John the Divine.
Correct. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, what is a place on earth?
I could guess heaven, but I don't know who sang it.
Correct. Belinda Carlisle. And finally, what must be missing an angel?
What must be missing an angel? Well, perhaps that sounds like man in his ordinary state of blindness.
I'm sorry, that's wrong, John. Heaven must be missing an angel. And that's by Tavares, as we know. So 4 out of 5. Well done.
John, this time last year, you will remember clearly we did a pop quiz, and I know how much you enjoyed it. But relax, we're not going to do a pop quiz time. But I thought just to sort of round off this year's of conversations, we'd sort of have a spontaneous the best of John Butler. So I'm going to say 3 of your favourite sayings, and I want you to complete the saying, and then you can do your usual spontaneous conversation around it. And the first one, which I would like you to complete and tell us a little bit about its origin. It starts, don't
fence me in. Yes, I think I was probably 15 or so. I had a little study, and I don't know how this picture came into my life, but probably from a calendar or something. There was a picture of a cowboy, on a horse of course, riding up to the crest of a hill, and which gave the impression of a vast sweep of open country before him. And the caption to that was, "Don't fence me in." And I just loved this picture. It seemed to completely conform with all that I loved. And perhaps in reaction to this tiny little study where I had to keep my books and do my homework, and spend much of my day there. Yes, don't fence me in. I've always loved that, and even as I grew up and had to consort more with people and live in urban situations and indoors when I wanted to be outdoors, he always seemed to just express really ever deeper and deeper, first of all, my manliness, my growing manliness' desire for the open, the pioneering life, the excitement of open country where man had never been before. That's what I wanted to be, an explorer or a cowboy when I was young. I read all those sort of books. But now I'm old, it's a marvellous theme for anybody who ventures onto the spiritual path, because it's exactly that which helps one to let go of all these worldly attachments, which are personal and worldly attachments, which keep us bound, just like weights keep a balloon tied down to the earth. Don't fence me in. Yes, absolutely. father built had a new house built in a field, and it was surrounded by other fields. And I just loved these fields. Nearly always on my own. I never bothered much with human company, but I loved that. And then when we moved north, when I was 12, into the Derbyshire hills, these lovely moorlands and hills we have around here. One can walk all day up there and hardly see another person. Even today it's like that. And then when I was 20, I had two dreams: to be a cowboy and see what the world was like before man messed it up. I was very lucky. I had a good father. He put me on a boat and sent me to Australia. And there I just loved those wide open spaces in the outback there, especially when I had a horse. Just ride through the wild open country. And at sea, that was another marvelous realization of that endlessness of space around me. Don't fence me in. And on the fens, where again you get this endless space around you, flat country. And I would work alone in my fields and take a pause for breath and just look around in this endless space, the skylark singing and the wind and the sun sometimes, or the rain. I just loved that, especially when I got into trouble with my wife and escaped to the field. Don't fence me in.
To make whole.
To make whole, be whole. Yes, this was given to me in South America. As a young man, I yearned to make the world a better place. And I couldn't really find how to do it. And people said, why don't you become a this or that or the other? But it all seemed too small. It didn't seem right for me. And so after much agonizing in my mind, I left. I was working for my father then. We had a family business in Sheffield. And much to Dad's opposition, I told him I was going to South America. Well, I did go. Alone, of course, on a cargo ship. And after many adventures, I first started working with sheep on one of the high haciendas in the mountains. One morning, I was sitting on a rock up on the mountainside, quite alone again. And something happened. I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, at least not with my ears. But it was as though a sort of inner voice said, to make whole, be whole. To make whole, be whole. Well, of course, I didn't really understand that at the time. But I did realize that most of the Indians I was working with were, many of them, more mature and wiser men than I was. I didn't really know. Now, this instruction, if that is what it was, of course, I didn't really understand it at the time. But I didn't forget it. And it's been coming back into my mind at fairly regular intervals ever since. Throughout my life, really. In due course, I came back to England. I started farming. I think it was usually after my great failures of life, when I felt that everything was going wrong, that these words would surface again, and I tried to understand a bit more of what they meant. I suppose you could say that almost is the story of my life, through the many other adventures I've had and things I've done. To make whole, be whole. All our human failings, all the things that we don't complete, all those things that seem to have something missing about them, in spirit, they are found to be complete. And what I realize now about prayer, which is, I repeat, a surrender to this spiritual completion, which is not, indeed has nothing to do with John Butler. It's a surrender to what I've often referred to in these videos as the presence, this abiding presence, which is always with us, infallible. And so gradually I've come to understand what people mean by the will of God, in which all things move according to God's purposes.
And now the third well-known phrase or saying of John Butler that you've come out, I've heard you say on many occasions. I still don't understand it really. I nod benignly, but I'm hoping you'll shed some further light on it. And it starts, man proposes.
Man proposes, God disposes. Well, this is not, of course, a saying of mine. It's as old as history, I suppose. But I spent most of my working life as a farmer, and it was widely used among farmers of my acquaintance as a way of helping us to live with the multiple upsets and disappointments that happen when things don't work out as we hope. You sow a crop and it goes wrong. You bring to birth or you help bring to birth and rear animals, and something goes wrong with them, they die. Will turn out to be not what you expect. Oh dear, life's full of it. You wait for fine weather and there's nothing but rain, and vice versa. Man proposes, God disposes. And like these old sayings, they're so full of wisdom. It really does sort of wean one off this arrogance of thinking we can control things. This human belief that man is the arbiter of his fate. Man proposes, God disposes. When I went to Russia, I found that they love that saying too. Very commonly said. We learn through a long, long process of getting it wrong, don't we? We learn by our mistakes. We try to say something wise or write a helpful letter to somebody, and it turns out to be foolishness or inappropriate. We wonder really what we can do in this life that isn't subject to failure. I suppose that's why, in the fullness of time, I'm not the only man who comes to trust God more and myself less. Man proposes. What's that mean? When we set the agenda to get things right. And along comes something, or something we can't even explain, not something straightforward like a hurricane or a flood, but some inexplicable reason some beloved person is taken away from us. We all ask why. And no matter how we try, we don't get an answer. Maybe we do or don't find some comfort in the words, man disposes, God disposes. I suppose just to come back to Christmas, which is appropriate, this really is the Christ, you see, which which appears in my experience, in multiple forms, in infinite number of forms in this world. In fact, everything, as I've often said in these videos, is Christ, really. Although it seems more obvious in whatever at the moment holds your affection, be it a woman or a dog or just the food you're eating. All is Christ, really, in different forms, being given, or voluntary, or in the case of food, probably involuntarily, being sacrificed, being given to you. And it's in one's receipt of this gift that we receive actually the divine, which is to which one responds, and eventually the receiver and the receiver and the received merge together. That's what happens. Just like in a close embrace with someone, you just melt into one. And this longing to be united is truth. It is truth. It is what actually happens as we grow in spirit. And just as another further pun on words, it's extraordinary, really, how we associate Christmas with presents. You see, presents, presents. That sort of presents. What will Santa give me for Christmas? Wrapped up parcels around the Christmas tree. But you see, the real presents. Presents, E-N-C, or is it C-E-S-E, presence. See, the two presents are actually the same. The real presence is the presence of God, isn't it? Is the presence of the beloved, which of course expands intimately into the presence of God. And that is the real Christmas message, that you see Jesus, or Emmanuel, which is the old word for Jesus. Emmanuel, come, O come, Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. And this is the fact. This is the absolute fact. Only it usually takes a lifetime to realize these facts, that it's a perennial fact, an every moment fact of our existence, that God, this spiritual presence, is with us always and forever. And these presents wrapped up in paper, tied with string, are really, I suppose, over many years have become a symbol of that. But that is the real Christmas present, isn't it? The real present. This ephemeral passing world, which we take to be for real, comes to pass as it does. This is the real substance of life. The present, the real present. Presence. Everyone's smiling today for a change, after a cold, wet most of the month. As a farmer, Christmas always meant another 100 hungry days until the spring. When you thought of the animals and the stock of hay getting less and less day by day, and how you couldn't afford to run out of winter fodder before the grass grew in the spring. For me, Jesus has always been such a constant presence. I suppose, yes, of course, the growth of grass in the spring and the dying down in the autumn has always been, for me, the natural cycles have always been more significant to me than those of man. But as I got these little window boxes outside my window, and I've cut down the last year's flowers now. But look, just there's a tiny little sort of pale bud popping up through the earth now. That little spring bulb is already pushing its head up towards the light. There we are. That's Advent. And no sooner does winter settle in that the signs of spring appear. New life. So when I look at this world, people get upset about this world as it's all coming to an end and it's all terrible, but you see, there's always signs of hope. There's always rebirth. In the end is my beginning. It's all cycles. It's all happened before. It comes round and round. One life succeeds another. The cycle of birth and birth and death. I've never related it so much to the church calendar, but it's as old as human experience goes, isn't it? It takes a long time, doesn't it, for the new life to emerge. You get the first signs in before December's finished, and yet we've got to wait till April, May before the spring really gets going. The first swallows appear. The cuckoo. We don't get many cuckoos now, but they used to come about middle of April, didn't they? Last week I received news from another dear friend of mine telling me that a member of her family, a 21-year-old boy, had taken his own life. And surprisingly, this is the third time that two more of my dearest and closest friends at the time lost their boys at 21 years, same way. I wasn't far from suicide myself. In fact, I remember just bursting out of my home. We lived at that time down in the valley behind me. I remember one evening only too well. I just couldn't bear it. I just broke out, slammed the door behind me, and went and stood over the bridge looking at the river. I suppose that was as near as I've ever come to ending my own life. But ever since the age of 12, when we first moved up here from the south of England, I've been coming up to where I'm sitting now. And gradually I fell deeper in love with the experience of just being up here. I didn't have the words to express it then, but now I use words like space, and I contrast the space I find up here to the limitedness of what used to just make me feel so claustrophobically trapped within a world of man that was too small, and I just couldn't breathe in it. I couldn't somehow function in that world of should and must and ought, the obligations and the duties of what I felt was required of me. So I felt such a failure in that world. And I'd come up here. I was nearly always alone in those days. I never had any close friends. I'd come up here and I'd feel better. And after a while up here, I'd be able to go back home again. What was it I found up here? I got a sort of sequence in my mind which has become a bit of a motto for me now. Silence. Silence like I feel up here. It often goes with solitude, space. With space comes that expansion, that sense of freedom. At least it's bigger, isn't it? Expansion. Freedom. Silence. Space. Freedom. It's just extraordinary. Why should freedom be associated with silence? But you know it is. Try it for yourself. What can I say this Christmas time? Do you know, I think the real important message I'll send out over the internet is just silence. An old-fashioned clock in this little room, from tick tock, 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 tock. Now time to leave draws near. It's been a good long life. Enough I've seen to welcome body in decline, for less of an impediment with less ability has meant desire for things to do also has run its course. And now, thank God, long practiced skill of letting go capricious will for unity lets me admit I'm better off without it. Furthermore, let's realize that real life, it's no surprise, is always in the moment, now. The only really one component of sustainability from which we have ability to see both past and future time with their attendant hope and fear just disappear. What a waste of energy when chosen by so many as a substitute reality of disappointed promises and questionable prophecies, a doomed approach that cannot fit the heavenly design for it. Now, when all the fight has left me, inner-outer conflict cease, nothing matters as it did, forevermore secure at peace, the world gets less as life proceeds, and everything on earth succeeds from man's desire and worldly needs to all-fulfilling simple faith, in which at last, with life complete, the worldly monster at my feet lies quiet, devouring jaws at rest, to smile without regrets, reflecting, yes, and I in turn accepting, everything was for the best. Well, my dears, shall we sign off then? God bless you all. I wish you lots of presents, in both senses, but the ones that really last. Forever and ever, without fail, unfailing love. Bless you all. Bye-bye for now.